and significance, understanding brand personality, how we're going to address the research gap, our research questions, experimental design, data analysis, results, impact and implications, and finally wrap up with our next steps. As advertisers are seeking diverse avenues to reach their target audiences, influencer marketing has penetrated every corner of our media. In 2023, the global influencer advertising market was valued at $30 billion. This number is expected to rise to $52 billion by 2028. Now, research has established that influencer advertising is effective, but whether or not this is more effective than traditional forms of advertising is still up for debate. This research investigates how influencer marketing and video advertising impacts brand personality and tests the extent to which the influencer represents the brand. Every brand exhibits a brand personality. This is a set of characteristics used to personify and categorize brands based on consistent, observable patterns. When we see brands like Nike, Dove, Rolex, and Patagonia, we think of so much more than just a dollar sign. Each of these brands represent different personalities that have their own unique identities. This is vital not only for brand positioning and differentiation, but for connecting to the core consumer. Now, the big argument in the advertising world is not how we define brand personality, but how we measure it. There are two competing frameworks that are said to potentially define BP, and that's the Big Five personality model, which is known in the world of psychology, and Aaker's personality framework. Now, each of these consists of 5 different factors, which are effectively just traits used to describe a personality dimension. Big Five consist of openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and emotional stability, while Aaker consists of sincerity, competence, excitement, ruggedness, and sophistication. The problem is that brands are incredibly complex in their representation. Often brands are represented by individuals, and we know these people as influencers. And yes, these are our Alex Earls and Emma Chamberlains of the world, and they have a huge impact on brand image. So to help us understand where these two competing frameworks lie in the world of advertising, we can examine them in 2 different conditions known as personality associations. The first is a direct personality association, where a brand is represented by a human or an influencer. And then we have an indirect personality association, where a brand is represented by product-related attributes, such as symbols, logos, price, etc. Which brings us to our 2 key research questions. First, how do the Big Five personality model and Aaker's personality model influence advertising outcomes? And then we also want to take a step further and understand how direct and indirect personality associations moderate Big Five and Aaker's personality model to influence advertising outcomes. So to test this, we administered a questionnaire to 300 participants in the United States. Participants received 2 randomly assigned videos out of 10. Now, 5 of these videos were direct personality associations, meaning they were influencer advertisements, and the other 5 were indirect personality associations, meaning they were those traditional advertisements. Additionally, 7 different dependent variables were evaluated, including brand attitude, video attitude, 3 social media motivations, purchase intention, and likelihood for the participant to seek additional information. We ran our results in IBM's SPSS using Andrew F. Hay's process model. And here's what we found. In both frameworks, Big Five and Aaker, each factor had a significant positive relationship with each dependent variable. So no matter what the factor was, the more brand personality, the higher the attitude was towards the video, towards the brand, the more likely the participant was to engage with social media, to seek a different information, or to purchase from the brand. When examining personality frameworks as a whole, rather than looking at individual traits, results showed no significant effect on any of the dependent variables. Next, we used direct and indirect personality associations as a moderator to test how individual factors would function in both the influencer and product conditions. Now, this is a visualization of the factor agreeableness at 3 different standard deviations and the mean for the dependent variable video attitude when moderated by indirect and direct personality associations. Now, we can see that the mean for video attitude is higher in the indirect condition. It experiences a greater rate of change in the direct condition. And we can actually map this out pretty easily in Excel by incrementing our standard deviations away from the mean. Now, the blue line here is the direct condition or influencer advertising, and the orange line is the indirect condition or product-related advertising. And you can see that where we plotted our 3 points, that the indirect mean lies above that direct mean. But as the consumer views the video to be more agreeable, the slope for the direct condition is steeper. So while the indirect condition has a greater mean, the direct condition has a greater rate of change. And we see that inverse effect here in influencer advertising. And we also see, on the flip side, a greater rate of change of brand attitude when we use product-based advertising. But what does any of this actually mean in the world of marketing? When a brand follows a identifying its unique brand personality, determining its desired outcomes, they can form their advertisements in a way that generates the most positive attitude towards a brand and towards their video advertisements. Moving forward, we are looking to add to the foundation we have built with this paper by conducting a further analysis. One is a cluster analysis that's going to group people based on personality characteristics. Because if we know anything about personality, it's that it's not characterized by a single factor, like ruggedness or sincerity. It might be a combination of a little bit of both. We also want to take a look at some more objective forms of measurement, such as using biometric data to capture some physiological responses to different advertisements. Overall, I'm looking forward to digging deeper into what our results reveal and drawing back our findings' impact on the industry. Here are my references. Thank you, and any questions?
I have a two-part question. The first is, I think you said you had 300 participants in a survey.
Yes.
Can you first briefly describe how you solicited participation?
Yeah.
And then can you say a little bit about the demographics of that group and any particular thing that jumped out from a particular demographic responding to some of the parts of your work?
Yeah, sure. So we used a survey service, Prolific. The reason I really like Prolific is it makes it very, very easy to get participants. You pay the service a certain amount, and then you just tell them how much you need, and they will get those responses. And I think we got all those responses in less than 3 hours. In terms of demographics, Prolific skews it in a way that if you, for example, if you have a ton of people participating in your survey that are ages 18 to 24, and you have more people in that age category who want to take your survey, it will then block them out so that you can have a better distribution. One thing I do want to point out that I think is kind of interesting that I actually was thinking about this morning with that advertisement with Harley Davidson being viewed, as the advertisement was viewed as more rugged, we saw that Maggie Hicks, who was the influencer in that category, as she was riding that motorcycle, people did not have as high of a brand attitude. And it might have to do with the fact that maybe people who traditionally purchase from a brand like Harley Davidson might want to see a more rugged looking man on a motorcycle than a feminine influencer. So that's something to look at there, but our demographics were normally distributed. Hey.
What implications do the finding of this research have for marketing and branding strategies?
Yeah. So the biggest thing that this had, I would say, is just the ability to identify what types of advertising is most effective. If we go back here for a second, the beauty of having something like this is you can actually chart the relationship between what your factor is going to be and how much video attitude you want. So say you have a brand that is highly agreeable. It stands at 3 standard deviations above the mean in agreeableness. Then you would scale up and say, okay, at this point, we would want to switch to a direct video advertising as opposed to an indirect video advertising. So at this very point with how our brand is on agreeableness, we want to make sure that we've included an influencer.
When you were talking about processing your data and everything, you were kind of talking about how important mean was versus the rate of change. Why would you say that or why were you saying that the rate of change was a more significant thing to notice rather than the mean?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. Again, we'll stay at this graph right here. When you think about agreeableness, agreeableness is a personality dimension. And when we measured it initially with our survey, we measured it on a 7-point Likert scale. But there's no end to which something can be agreeable. Something could be agreeable on a scale of 7, but then another brand could be aid. So you have to extend that out beyond one standard deviation. And then you see again in this chart, as you continue to become more agreeable, which is an infinite possibility of agreeableness, you're going to increase in your direct personality association and your indirect personality association. So those 3 points plotted tells a little bit of the story with means, but it doesn't tell the full story as far as rate of change goes.